The Legend of Dragoon is one of the most memorable yet mysterious titles in the history of Japanese role-playing games, JRPGs. Released in 1999 in Japan and 2000 in North America for the Sony PlayStation, it was developed by Japan Studio and published by Sony Computer Entertainment. The game was directed and produced by Shuhei Yoshida, who would later become one of the most influential figures at PlayStation. The development took over 3 years and involved more than 100 staff members, an enormous production for its time, with Sony investing millions to create a cinematic RPG experience that could rival Square Enix's Final Fantasy series. The inspiration behind The Legend of Dragoon was rooted in the desire to merge the traditional fantasy of dragons and warriors with a new level of cinematic storytelling and 3D visuals. Yoshida and his team envisioned a world filled with ancient myths, lost civilizations, and human transformation, leading to the concept of dragoons, humans capable of harnessing the power of dragon spirits. The game's combat system introduced a unique mechanic called additions, which required precise timing inputs during attacks, blending action elements into turn-based combat. Combined with its rich lore, complex characters, and emotionally charged storyline, following Dart, a young warrior on a journey to avenge his family and uncover the fate of the ancient dragon campaign. The Legend of Dragoon became a cult classic. Although it didn't achieve the same commercial success as Final Fantasy or Chrono Cross, The Legend of Dragoon left a deep mark on RPG history. It demonstrated Sony's commitment to developing original IPs and expanding beyond hardware manufacturing into world building and storytelling. Its advanced use of CGI cutscenes, orchestral music, and emotional depth helped shape expectations for cinematic narratives in games. Over time, it gained a passionate fan base that still campaigns for a remake or sequel, viewing it as an overlooked gem that showcased the artistic potential of RPGs at the dawn of the 3D gaming era. Today, The Legend of Dragoon stands as a symbol of ambition, creativity, and the golden age of PlayStation storytelling. A legend that continues to inspire nostalgia and admiration across generations of gamers. As time passed, The Legend of Dragoon transformed from a modestly received title into a revered cult phenomenon, its legacy growing stronger with each generation of gamers who discovered it. What set the game apart wasn't just its story or visuals, but its sense of scale and mythic weight. The narrative spanned thousands of years, connecting human struggles with divine conflicts, and blending personal tragedy with cosmic destiny. Its central themes, vengeance, redemption, sacrifice, and the cyclical nature of war, resonated deeply with players who were seeking more than just a fantasy adventure. The characters, each bearing their own pain and past, evolved through the journey, making the game feel almost like an animated epic or a playable novel. Artistically, The Legend of Dragoon stood as a bridge between eras, marking the transition from the pixel-based storytelling of the 16-bit age to the emotionally cinematic experiences of the 3D PlayStation era. Its use of pre-rendered backgrounds and motion-based combat animations pushed the PlayStation hardware to its limits. The music, composed by Dennis Martin and Takeo Maratsu, amplified its emotional impact, combining sweeping orchestral pieces with haunting melodies that gave the world of Endiness a sense of timeless grandeur. Even its Dragoon transformations, complete with elaborate visual sequences, became iconic moments that symbolized power, evolution, and destiny. In the broader story of gaming, The Legend of Dragoon represented Sony's attempt to prove that it could compete with, and even surpass, the giants of RPG development. It showed that storytelling and presentation could elevate a game into an art form. While it never spawned sequels or cross-media adaptations, its influence can be felt in later RPGs that embraced cinematic storytelling and deep emotional arcs. Many game developers have since cited it as an inspiration for blending traditional mechanics with interactive narrative depth. 2 decades later, fans continue to celebrate The Legend of Dragoon through remasters, fan art, and online communities, keeping the spirit of Endiness alive. Its endurance in gaming culture serves as proof that sometimes true legends don't fade because of sales numbers. They endure because of the emotional worlds they create and the memories they leave behind. The legend of Dragoon remains not just a relic of the past, but a timeless reminder of what happens when passion, vision, and storytelling converge into something truly extraordinary. A legend forged not just by its creators, but by every player who ever took up the power of a Dragoon. In retrospect, The Legend of Dragoon has earned its place as one of the most enigmatic masterpieces of the PlayStation era, a game that was ahead of its time, yet underappreciated in its own. When it first launched, critics were divided. Some praised its ambition and visuals, while others found its pacing and combat system unconventional compared to faster, flashier RPGs of the time. But as years passed and nostalgia set in, players began to see Dragoon for what it truly was, a bold experiment that dared to craft a mythos rather than just a game. It took familiar RPG tropes, dragons, ancient wars, chosen heroes, and wove them into a universe that felt ancient, sacred, and human all at once. Its world building was meticulous. The continent of Endiness wasn't just a backdrop, but a living myth, a world shaped by gods, spirits, and the scars of a war between dragons and humans. Through its lore, the game explored existential questions. What is destiny? Can humans escape the control of gods? Are vengeance and justice ever truly separate? These themes gave The Legend of Dragoon a philosophical edge that distinguished it from its contemporaries. Its heroes weren't perfect. They were flawed, grieving, and burdened by the weight of history. That emotional realism, combined with the fantastical setting, gave the story a timeless resonance that still captivates fans today. From a technological standpoint, The Legend of Dragoon was also a milestone. Its 4-disc length represented one of the largest single-game undertakings on the PlayStation. The cinematic cutscenes were groundbreaking, rivaling Final Fantasy VIII in fidelity, while its hybrid combat system, blending real-time timing sequences with strategic turn-based play, prefigured later action RPG innovations. Sony's investment in the game demonstrated their confidence in narrative-driven gaming, helping establish the PlayStation as the home for ambitious, story-rich titles. Though a sequel was rumored and even partially conceptualized by Japan's studio, it was ultimately canceled, perhaps a casualty of the rapidly changing landscape of early 2000s gaming. Yet its absence only deepened the game's mystique. Fans began treating The Legend of Dragoon not just as a classic, but as a legend in the truest sense, a lost chapter in the evolution of JRPGs. Online campaigns, petitions for remakes, and even fan-made remasters have kept the dream alive for decades. Today, The Legend of Dragoon is remembered not only for its dragons or battles, but for its heart. It stands as a tribute to the era when developers built worlds by hand and filled them with emotion, mystery, and meaning. It reminds us that even in a time of technical limitations, storytelling could soar beyond pixels and polygons to reach something timeless. It is a monument to creativity, a cornerstone of RPG history, and a reminder that legends are not always born from fame. Sometimes they are born from love, vision, and the unyielding belief that a story can touch souls across generations. As The Legend of Dragoon entered the 21st century, its legend continued to evolve beyond the PlayStation console that birthed it. Though it never received sequels, remakes, or even consistent recognition in Sony's official catalog for many years, its influence quietly rippled through the gaming industry. Developers and storytellers who grew up with the game have often cited its emotional depth and mythic scale as sources of inspiration. It showed that a role-playing game could be more than numbers and levels. It could be a living narrative about identity, grief, and transformation. In many ways, The Legend of Dragoon predicted the narrative ambitions of later RPGs and cinematic experiences, from Final Fantasy Kings to Dragon Age and even The Witcher 3. Its community became the guardian of its legacy. Fans preserved the game through online forums, fan sites, and digital preservation projects, ensuring that the story of Dart and his companions would not be lost to time. When Sony eventually re-released the game digitally on the PlayStation Network and later on modern platforms through emulation, a new generation of players finally had the chance to experience it. What followed was a resurgence of appreciation. Longtime fans revisited it with nostalgia, while newcomers discovered its artistry and storytelling depth. YouTube retrospectives, Remastered soundtrack projects and fan-translated interviews with the original creators reignited the conversation about how such a visionary project could have faded quietly after its release. Critics who once dismissed it began to re-evaluate its design with modern eyes, recognizing that The Legend of Dragoon had attempted ideas that were far ahead of its technological time. Its cinematic ambition, its complex lore, and its hybrid combat system would fit naturally in today's era of narrative-driven RPGs. In essence, it was a prototype for the emotionally immersive experiences that define the genre today. It reminded the world that great art doesn't always find immediate recognition. Sometimes it takes decades for its brilliance to be understood. In the grand timeline of gaming, The Legend of Dragoon stands as both a masterpiece and a mystery, a single, shining flame from Sony's golden age of experimentation. It represents the courage of creators who dared to dream beyond formulas, crafting something deeply human within a fantasy world of gods and dragons. It speaks to the eternal truth of storytelling, that even legends born in obscurity can find immortality through the hearts of those who believe in them. Today, its echoes can still be heard in the whispers of players who call for a remake, not merely for better graphics or modern mechanics, but for the chance to relive a feeling that few games have ever captured, the feeling of stepping into a world ancient and alive, of wielding the power of dragons, and of realizing that even the most forgotten stories can soar again. In the vast tapestry of RPG history, The Legend of Dragoon remains exactly what its name promises. Not just a game, but a legend, forever etched in the heart of gaming's golden age. Even now, more than 2 decades since its release, The Legend of Dragoon continues to occupy a unique and sacred place in the cultural memory of gaming. It is one of those rare titles that transcends its medium, not just because of what it achieved, but because of what it symbolized. To many fans, it represents an era of purity in game development, a time when creativity and heart mattered more than profit margins or market algorithms. It stands as a reminder of the PlayStation's early philosophy to empower storytellers, take risks, and bring players worlds they had never imagined before. The creative team, led by Shuhei Yoshida and Japan Studio, poured their souls into crafting not just a game, but a mythological universe. Their vision was rooted in both Eastern and Western fantasy, the spiritual essence of dragons, the tragedy of human ambition, and the timeless clash between destiny and free will. The Dragoon spirits themselves became more than mere tools of battle. They were symbols of inner awakening, of humanity's potential to transcend its limitations. The transformations from human to Dragoon visually represented themes of evolution, rebirth, and connection to a higher power, core ideas that mirrored the human journey itself. Over the years, as technology evolved and RPGs became increasingly cinematic and expansive, The Legend of Dragoon came to be viewed as a precursor to the modern narrative RPG. Its emphasis on deep lore, interactive combat, and emotional storytelling foreshadowed what would later become standard in franchises like Mass Effect, Final Fantasy XIII, and Persona 5. Many of these later titles owe an unspoken debt to Dragoon's willingness to blur the line between gameplay and story, showing that emotion could be as powerful as action in defining a player's experience. The fans' devotion, too, became part of its legend. Forums, fan art, and petitions calling for remakes have persisted for decades, not driven by nostalgia alone, but by the recognition that The Legend of Dragoon deserves its rightful place in the pantheon of gaming history. The emotional bond between the community and the game reflects something that few franchises ever achieve: genuine love. Players often speak of the heartbreak of losing Shauna, the moral complexity of Rose, or the tragic pasts that haunt each Dragoon, as if they were memories from their own lives. It's this kind of emotional investment that defines true art, and The Legend of Dragoon achieved it at a time when games were still fighting to be seen as art at all. In a broader sense, The Legend of Dragoon also serves as a cautionary tale about the fleeting nature of innovation in a fast-moving industry. Despite its ambition, Sony never built upon its foundation. Japan Studio was eventually dissolved, and the chance to expand the Dragoon saga disappeared with it. Yet in that silence, something remarkable happened. The legend grew. The lack of sequels, the unanswered mysteries, and the untouched potential became part of its mythos, giving it an almost sacred aura. Today, as gaming enters an era of remakes and revivals, The Legend of Dragoon remains one of the most requested and most deserving candidates for rebirth. It stands not just as a memory, but as a monument to the era that defined modern RPG storytelling, an era of passion, risk-taking, and imagination unbound. To those who played it, it was more than a game. It was an odyssey, one that began with the cry of a dragon and ended with the quiet understanding that legends never truly die. They simply wait, in the hearts of those who remember, to rise again. And so, the enduring legacy of The Legend of Dragoon continues to ripple through the generations, a quiet yet powerful echo of a time when storytelling and emotion were the soul of gaming. What makes its story even more remarkable is how it transcended its initial reception to become a cultural symbol of perseverance, both for its creators and for its fans. In many ways, its journey mirrors that of its own protagonist, Dart, misunderstood at first, scarred by loss, but ultimately finding immortality through the unwavering belief of those who stood by it. Every element of The Legend of Dragoon was a reflection of its era's ambition and artistry. The late 1990s marked a revolution in gaming, the moment when developers began to realize that video games could be cinematic experiences capable of evoking real human emotion. Sony's Japan studio wanted to create a work that could stand shoulder to shoulder with Final Fantasy VII, not as an imitation, but as a spiritual counterpart, a tale built upon deeper mythology and tragedy. What emerged was a tapestry of dragons, gods, and mortals, intertwined in a cycle of destiny, where every battle had emotional weight and every victory came at a cost. The game's core message, that even ordinary people can rise to greatness when burdened by love, loss, and fate, struck a profound chord. Dart's quest to avenge his family's destruction was never simply about revenge. It was about healing, forgiveness, and discovering the truth of his own existence. Characters like Rose, haunted by a millennium of guilt, or Lavitz, driven by unshakable loyalty, gave the story a level of maturity and introspection rarely seen in games of its time. These were not archetypes, but people, flawed, broken, and beautifully human beneath their armor. The artistic direction and world-building further solidified its identity. The visual style, blending medieval fantasy with mythological grandeur, made Endiness feel both ancient and alive. The environments, hand-painted and layered with rich color palettes, created a dreamlike sense of exploration, enhanced by Dennis Martin's and Takeo Muratsu's moving soundtrack. Even today, tracks like If You Still Believe and the Dragoon transformation theme remain instantly recognizable, invoking deep nostalgia for those who once journeyed through the world of Endiness. From a cultural standpoint, The Legend of Dragoon helped cement the idea that a game could achieve cinematic storytelling on par with film, a notion that would later influence generations of game designers and writers. It also challenged the idea that only major franchises could define an era, proving that passion projects, no matter how overlooked at first, could endure far beyond their time. This is why discussions of Dragoon continue in forums, documentaries, and retrospectives. It's a story that refuses to fade because it represents something timeless about art and creativity, that sincerity can outlast success. Today, with the resurgence of classic RPGs through remasters and remakes, the call for The Legend of Dragoon's return grows louder. Fans hope that Sony, recognizing the emotional weight this title holds, might one day resurrect the Dragoon spirits for a new generation. But even if that day never comes, its essence already lives on, in the hearts of those who still believe. The Legend of Dragoon remains not just a product of the PlayStation's golden age, but a living testament to the power of storytelling in games. It teaches that legends are not born from popularity, but from the impact they leave upon the soul. It is a story of dragons and heroes, yes, but more deeply, it is a story about memory, loss, and the eternal flame of hope. And like the Dragoon spirits themselves, its light endures, waiting patiently to be awakened once more, when the world is ready to remember the legend that once soared beyond the skies of Endiness. In many ways, The Legend of Dragoon has transcended its identity as a single PlayStation title to become a symbol of something larger, the spirit of artistic ambition that once defined the golden age of Japanese RPGs. It stands as a monument to what creators can achieve when they dare to build worlds not for commercial certainty, but for the love of storytelling and myth-making. The very fact that it was created by a team within Sony, a company then best known for hardware, not narrative design, makes its existence all the more extraordinary. It was a labor of faith. Faith in the idea that a story about dragons, gods, and the fragility of the human soul could connect with players on a personal level. Though its initial reception was overshadowed by industry titans, the Legend of Dragoon's story has aged like an ancient tale rediscovered, its relevance growing stronger as gaming matured. Modern players, returning to it decades later, often remark on how its themes feel more resonant now than ever. Its reflections on destiny, grief, and the cycles of destruction mirror the struggles of real human life. The characters' internal battles, Rose's guilt, Dart's loss, Meru's innocence, and Lloyd's philosophical defiance, all embody timeless truths about what it means to be human. What was once seen as a fantasy adventure has become, in hindsight, a deeply human epic. Its continuing legacy also lies in how it united people. Across continents, forums, and generations, fans formed communities dedicated to preserving its story. They translated interviews, remastered its soundtrack, enhanced its visuals, and even reconstructed its lore through digital archives. These passionate efforts turned The Legend of Dragoon from a forgotten title into a cultural relic, proof that the emotional connection between art and audience can sustain a work long after its creators have moved on. It became more than nostalgia. It became a movement of remembrance, a collective act of keeping a story alive. The game's spiritual DNA can still be found in the modern RPG landscape, in the cinematic gravitas of Final Fantasy XVI, the mythological complexity of Elden Ring, and the emotional vulnerability of Xenoblade Chronicles. Each of these titles carries an echo of Dragoon's legacy, the belief that myth and emotion can coexist within interactivity, that players can feel as much as they fight. The Edition's combat system, once seen as niche, has since influenced action hybrid mechanics that now define the genre. In its own quiet way, The Legend of Dragoon was a pioneer of what RPGs would one day become. But perhaps its greatest triumph lies in its enduring emotional power. Players who finished the game decades ago still remember the heartbreak of Rose's revelations, the loyalty of Lavitz, and the bittersweet ending that tied the fate of humanity to the sacrifice of its heroes. It left an imprint not through endless sequels or sprawling franchises, but through a single, complete story, one that closed with the weight of finality, and yet the promise of remembrance. In the history of gaming, there are few titles that can truly be called legendary. Many are successful, and many are beautiful, but few capture the rare magic that transforms them into timeless myths. The Legend of Dragoon is one of those few. It is not only a tale about dragoons and dragons, it is a meditation on love, loss, destiny, and the quiet heroism found in sacrifice. Its world may have fallen silent in the years since, but its spirit continues to soar, passed down through memory, conversation, and the enduring belief that true legends never fade. They only wait for those who still believe to awaken them once more. And so, The Legend of Dragoon remains suspended in time, a whisper from an age when video games were still discovering how to make us feel. It endures as both artifact and anthem, an embodiment of artistic courage, emotional sincerity, and the boundless imagination that characterized the dawn of 3D storytelling. To this day, its name carries a certain reverence among those who remember it, not merely for its gameplay or visuals, but for the ineffable sense of wonder it left behind. It's the kind of game that lingers in memory like a dream you can't quite forget, vivid, mysterious, and full of longing. In an era dominated by reboots, sequels, and remakes, The Legend of Dragoon stands apart as an unbroken story, complete, self-contained, and hauntingly beautiful in its finality. Its creators never returned to it, and perhaps that is part of its power. The game's silence after its release gave it the quality of a lost myth, like a sacred text whose meaning deepens over time. Each replay uncovers new emotional layers, each generation of players interpreting its story in the context of their own world, where some see tragedy, others see redemption. Where some feel the pain of endings, others find peace in the idea that the legend fulfilled its destiny, and, in doing so, achieved immortality. From a historical standpoint, its existence also marked a turning point for Sony. The Legend of Dragoon proved that the company could create an original, large-scale narrative experience entirely on its own, a precursor to the cinematic storytelling later perfected in franchises like Shadow of the Colossus, The Last of Us, and God of War. The DNA of Dragoon, its emotional honesty, mythic scope, and dedication to artistic craft, quietly flowed into the bloodstream of Sony's future creative philosophy. Every PlayStation epic that sought to blend heart with heroism owes something, however faint, to this pioneering work. The fans who continue to honor the game have, in essence, become its modern storytellers. Through retrospectives, documentaries, remastered soundtracks, and modded enhancements, they have transformed The Legend of Dragoon from a product into a living legacy. They keep alive the voices of Dart, Rose, and their companions, not out of nostalgia alone, but because those voices speak truths that remain universal, that grief can become strength, that even in despair there is hope, and that the bonds we forge can transcend even time itself. The world of endiness may never see another dawn officially rendered by Sony's hands, yet it continues to live. In fan art, in music covers, in rewritten scripts, and dreams of what could have been. Perhaps that is fitting. True legends, after all, are not meant to be endlessly rewritten. They are meant to be remembered, retold, and revered. Like ancient myths passed down through generations, the Legend of Dragoon thrives precisely because it remains elusive, its meaning shaped anew by every player who rediscovers it. In the grand history of gaming, the Legend of Dragoon is more than a title. It is a testament to the soul of creation itself. It represents what happens when technology, art, and heart converge at the perfect moment in time. Its creators gave us a world, its players gave it immortality, and together they forged something that still burns bright decades later in the collective memory of those who believe. For as long as there are players who remember the call of the Dragoon spirit, who still hear the wings of dragons echoing across endiness, the Legend of Dragoon will never truly fade. It will remain, forever, what its title promised. Not merely a story, but a legend. One born of dreams, carried by faith, and destined to endure beyond the reach of time itself. And as the years pass, the Legend of Dragoon continues to evolve from a game into a living mythology, a shared memory that connects generations of players who never stopped believing in the power of its story. What began as an ambitious PlayStation experiment in 1999 has become a timeless symbol of artistic sincerity and creative courage. It endures not because of marketing or mass recognition, but because it touched something fundamental in those who experienced it. The yearning for meaning in a world of chaos, the hope that even pain can give rise to purpose, and the dream that our spirits, like those of the Dragoons, can transcend the limits of mortality. Every era of gaming has its icons, titles that define innovation, beauty, or emotion. But the Legend of Dragoon occupies a more sacred space. It is the story that quietly refuses to die. It's not just remembered, it's loved. Fans don't simply replay it. They preserve it, study it, restore it, and reinterpret it through modern eyes. There's a rare intimacy between this game and its audience, forged not through spectacle, but through sincerity. It spoke to a generation of dreamers who believed that fantasy worlds could teach real lessons about courage, sacrifice, and forgiveness. The passage of time has also revealed how forward-thinking the game truly was. Its intricate lore about divine manipulation, human rebellion, and cyclical tragedy echoes the thematic depth found in today's prestige RPGs and even modern storytelling in television and film. The emotional maturity of characters like Rose, a warrior burdened by centuries of regret, predates the nuanced character writing now celebrated in games like Nier Automata and Dark Souls. In hindsight, The Legend of Dragoon was not just part of the PlayStation generation. It was ahead of it, quietly laying groundwork for a narrative philosophy the industry would only fully embrace decades later. The mystery surrounding its canceled sequel has only strengthened its mythic aura. Fragments of concept art and development notes from Japan Studio hint at stories untold, of new Dragoons, new conflicts, and the continuation of a legend abruptly silenced. To fans, this unfinished promise is not a wound, but a wonder. It adds to the sense that The Legend of Dragoon was never meant to be a franchise, but rather a single perfect tale, one complete lifetime of heroes and gods, ending not in a cliffhanger, but in a kind of poetic stillness. Today, in the digital age, its resurgence is both nostalgic and revolutionary. When Sony reintroduced The Legend of Dragoon through emulation on modern consoles, thousands of players, old and new alike, gathered online to celebrate its return. Streams, retrospectives, and renewed calls for a remake surged across social platforms. For a brief moment, the fires of endiness burned bright again, proving that a story told with honesty will always find its way back into the light. Ultimately, The Legend of Dragoon endures because it represents something that modern gaming often forgets: that legends are not built on budgets or graphics, but on emotion and heart. Its world may be rendered in polygons and pre-rendered backdrops, but its soul is eternal. It teaches that even when the world changes, the stories that matter, stories about love, loss, destiny, and hope, remain timeless. And perhaps that is the true magic of The Legend of Dragoon. It is more than nostalgia. It is proof that art, when made with belief and heart, becomes immortal. Its dragons may sleep, its creators may have moved on, but the legend lives in every player who still dreams of wings, fire, and light. For legends, as the game taught us, are not forgotten. They only rest waiting for the moment when someone once again dares to awaken the Dragoon spirit within their heart.